Sonible has released a brand new smart limiter which promises to speed up and automate mastering. Is it the FabFilter Pro L2 killer? Let's find out. But first, please like and subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. I've started a Patreon where you can get early video views, mixed feedback, and other benefits. And head over to palebluedot.ca for free goodies and information on my mini course on mix separation. There's a lot to unpack here, but let's see how easy it is to get up and running with Smart Limiter. So when I first insert Smart Limiter, I see an interface that seems mostly intuitive and familiar. It kind of reminds me of Pro L2 with the loudness sidebar expanded on the right-hand side. And similar to many limiters, it has an input gain slider that drives limiting and will increase the output gain by default. What's slightly different is that the true peak brick wall limiter is stacked directly above the input. Visually, this makes a lot of sense. The input gain is what will make your master louder, and the limit is where nothing will go beyond. Most streaming services want -1 dB of headroom these days, so this is helpful. Now, all you have to do to start using Smart Limiter's smart features is select a genre from the list. I'm using an alternative rock song for this with an integrated loudness level of about -22 dB LUFS. So let's select alternative here, it should match. And then, just like Smart EQ, you have to let Smart Limiter learn your program material. The best thing to do is loop the loudest part of your song, usually the end of the song in popular music, and then hit the learn button. Smart Limit will start doing its thing. There. We have a big gain increase. Let's go through the interface and see what Smart Limiter is doing to the mix. So we have reset and bypass, and I love that they have a nice transparent bypass that's latency compensated with no glitches or dropouts. Use this instead of your DAW's bypass button when comparing. And speaking of comparing, here's one of my favorite features to see on a mastering limiter: auto-compensated gain, or in this case, constant gain. If I click this, then Smart Limit adjusts the gain to match the average level of the mix. So now, when I bypass, I can just hear whatever changes Smart Limit is actually making to the track, and not getting distracted by the difference in loudness. This way, since it's compensated, I can hear the original mix compared to the compressed mix. This can be a real eye-opener, but in this case, this sounds like a pretty transparent limiting. Impressive. And we also have the delta here, which is great for hearing exactly what the limiter is compressing. This is the difference between the compressed signal and the normal signal. Next, we have our loudness readout expressed in LUFS, or loudness units full scale, the most common standard for measuring loudness these days. I won't go into detail with this stuff in this review, but I encourage you to read up on these things further if you want to get deeper into mastering. But for now, Smart Limit is taking care of all this stuff for us. Moving back to the left, we have our big ol' limiter controls. As I mentioned earlier, turning up the input gain is what makes your master louder. We're essentially pushing this mix into a brick wall and forcing it to be as loud as it can, while managing how much we crush the peaks to get there. It's like Smart Filter decided 10.8 dB is enough, and sounds like a good place to be. And since I have Spotify selected as the target, it automatically has -1 dB set as the true peak limit, or the absolute maximum limit where the signal will be cut off by a brick wall limiter. Where Smart Limiter really starts to deviate is in the lower part of this section. On the far left we have distortion monitoring, which I don't think I've seen in any other limiter. Let's take a look. Basically, the more red lines you see in this spectrum, the more distortion is being incurred by the limiter. Limiters are by definition always imparting distortion on the signal, it's just a matter of how much is audible and acceptable. Watch what happens when I crank the input level. We get a lot more red, seeing it a lot in the mids and high mids. I actually wouldn't mind this display being a bit bigger so I can get some more information on exactly where distortion is happening, but we get the point. And I actually kind of like how this sounds, even fully crushed. But I'm a sucker for overcompression. I realize this is probably a bit much. I'm going to put this back to its suggested settings. Neat trick to go back to what Smart Limiter chose. Click the logo on the right of the genre selector, and that'll reset it back to its originally suggested settings. Now here's where things get intriguing. The sound shaping panel. These all shape how Smart Limit will process the material. The style dial determines how aggressively the limiter works on your mix. To the left, it's safer limiting, and then higher settings is hard limiting. Again, Smart Limit will choose what it thinks is the best, but play around with this to find what fits best. You might find the more aggressive limiting is better for your source material. The saturation dial can be used to impart a little more juice into the track and increase perceived loudness. Let's crank this to see what it sounds like. Oh, look at this. Look at the distortion monitoring. Dancing with the light. Actually, the saturation sounds really good. A little bit much here, but I could see hitting this hard for when you want a modern, over-the-top tape sound. I might need to pull out Smart Limit for the drums. Then we have Balance, the most enigmatic setting here. Balance claims to adjust the actual spectral balance of the track and optimize it for limiting. So I assume this is probably bringing in some of that smart EQ technology to correct perceived imperfections in the track. It's very subtle. Seems to make this mix a bit darker when I crank it. I think I'll just trust Smart Limit to figure that out. Next is bass control, which looks to enhance the low end of your mix, and this is kind of unexpected for a limiter. There's not a lot of explanation for what this does, but turning it up does remind me of using something like Wave's R-Bass. That adds a smooth bass character to your track. This might be great for mixes that sound a little thin. And what I missed earlier until I read the manual was the attack and release settings are here on the input gain threshold. So if you're not happy with Smart Limit's attack and release suggestions, you can go ahead and change these manually. And speaking of, something I love is that there's an automatic release setting on this. It's a great option to have, especially on a plugin like this that is trying to automate the process. To my ears, this usually sounds better than leaving it at manual, but of course, experiment to taste, and it's nice to be able to turn off auto and just adjust this yourself. Here's another unique feature. Hit Quality Check, and Smart Limiter will let you know how you're doing. Unsurprisingly, it was pretty darn happy with its own settings, but if I turn up the input, I'll get a warning. So you can play with this and know what Smart Limit is trying to keep you within the target ranges. And Quality Check tells you exactly how much to turn the output down to get the target loudness level. It's right over here. So with Spotify, we need to turn this mix down 4.7 to get to -14 LUFS. Now I gotta say, for an automatic limiter, I'm kind of surprised it doesn't adjust this output gain automatically. Next, we have a very useful but complex section, the loudness and dynamics grid. I'm not going to go into too much detail about this because it demands more time and reading than I have for this review. but I think professional mastering engineers are going to trample over themselves to get this once they see it. For the layperson, the most salient point might be the closer these crosshairs are together, the more cohesive your master's loudness and dynamics are. Apart from that, I'm moving on to save time. It's a great feature. I'm glad it's all here. Just for fun, I want to hear how Smart Limit compares to many people's mastering limiter of choice, FabFilter Pro L 2. So I've duplicated the track, and we can see that I need to apply about 10.8 dB of gain to get a similar loudness. So let's try to do that. Okay, so that same input gain on L2 is not getting us quite as loud as Smart Limit. I mean, we're going to have some architectural differences here, so let's raise the gain. Trying to get to about 9.3 LUFS. Update this. There we go, getting closer. Okay, we're hitting about 9.3, 9.4. Let's see, I'm going to switch between the two. I'm going to switch between the two limiters now. Pretty close. Well, it's pretty close to these two. If I keep going back and forth and tweaking, I'm pretty sure I get these to be almost indistinguishable, which says a lot for Pro L, which has mostly manual settings, and Smart Limit, which could allow any user to get this result merely by hitting Learn. Very impressive. So, all in all, I would highly recommend this plugin. If you're looking for a pro-level limiter for your masters, or need a hand getting there, then this is right for you. And at the €89 introductory price, it's way cheaper than Pro L2. I love Pro L2, but Smart Limiter may move up the ranks in the top spot in my chain. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and head over to paleblue.ca and sign up for my newsletter. I'm giving away a free contact instrument and mixing cheat sheet. Plus, you can get information on my new mini course about mixing. Until next time, mix well.